It's been the craziest year of my life, and I'm a man who's lived a crazy life for 20 years. So,
Welcome to PokerOrg's The Interview. In this episode, we catch up with Shaun Deeb. He weighs in on his $1 million weight loss bet with Bill Perkins, and why did he not shave his hair and his beard to have an edge in that bet? He gives us his take on the Tice Becker crossbook bet happening this summer and more on the World Series. And of course, Phil Hellmuth shows up in the conversation. I mean, how could he not? Stay tuned. I'm Craig Tapscott. Let's get into it.
The Interview by PokerOrg.
so many ridiculous things have happened in the last 12 months. I constantly look back at them, and they're all things that I thought would never happen in my life, to myself and my friend circle. So it's just, we've all been crushing it in everything we've been doing. And it's so great to be surrounded by so many successful people who are peaking life personally, financially, emotionally, socially. I mean, it's just, I can't imagine if you ask any of us, speaking of Team Lucky, that's Josh Ariett, Mac Lance, myself, and Dan Wyman, what we would have thought we would have been in these years, we all would have laughed at you. I mean, we've all just been extremely successful at everything we do, except for Mac Lance at the World Series. So, we're trying to get him to get his no bracelet off his back, and we're going to work hard on him this year.
No, I'm excited. I was on your team from day one. I sent you a message. I said, I know some guys because I train at Gold's Venice that will help you. And you said, I've got a team. If I need anything, I'll give you a shout. But I was really proud of you. I thought you might have stumbled some during the series because it's kind of hard to play 12 hours a day and eat correct. How did you do that during last year's series?
So I had an amazing resource. My massage therapist, Kim Carey, she just had met me a few months earlier. She literally had met me 2 weeks before I booked the bet. I got a massage with her, and I knew she was the type of massage therapist I enjoy.
Uh-huh.
And I told her about the bet on our second massage. She's like, I'm in. What do I got to do? And I was like, well, can you do XYZ? Can you start working on me at my house? And then a couple months in, I was like, do you want to come to Vegas for the summer? And she's like, yeah. So she attempted to get her license, and she came out there, and her license wasn't legal for the first month. And so she was just running food for me, giving me massages, and just being like a PA for myself throughout the series. Anything I needed, laundry, it was so helpful. So I ate super good. I lost a bunch of weight during the series as expected. I mean, even years I ate whatever I wanted, I would lose a bunch of weight because you do so much walking between those rooms, and you're playing poker for so much, so you don't really have time to eat that much. But yeah, I had a meal plan company doing my meal plans for my nutritionist. I heated those up. I had my room super close with a microwave, a fridge and a freezer, and all my drinks and snacks, like a bunch of protein bars. So yeah, I did great on diet during the series, and
Right.
that was kind of my whole goal. The reason why when I booked the bet with Bill, I wanted to be the start of the next World Series, because I knew most likely I was not going to find time to lift. I was going to focus on the World Series, try to win more bracelets, try to make a bunch of money, and then focus on the weight loss bet. And I kind of knew what stages of this bet I was in, and we kind of had our game plan from the start, and we stuck to that plan to a T.
Well, tell me about the balance between a lot of people doing these kind of weight loss things go straight to a lot of cardio when really, and Matt talked about it on the show we did a couple of weeks ago at Only Friends, that you really, the more muscle mass you gain, the more fat you burn. So tell me about your trainer and his plan for you to balance that out.
Yeah, so my trainer, I've never had a trainer before. I've never worked out, so I didn't know who to hire. There was a guy who is a local cop. My cousin's a sergeant in that force. And about a year before I booked the bet, he decided to open a gym in a building my family owns. And right when he was going to open the gym, the week he built out the place himself, he's super handy. The week he was going to open up the gym, the house adjacent to the building that we own, a disgruntled ex-boyfriend tried to burn the house down. So the fire department came and investigated the building to make sure there was no damage from the smoke, and saw the gym and was like, yeah, you can't operate. This place doesn't have a certificate of occupancy. There's no active sprinkler system with the building this size. So you just can't run your business here. So I knew that he had a business he put a bunch of time and money into, and he couldn't operate it. So I called him the night I booked the bet, and I said, "Hey, my cousin, I met you once through my dad. I have this crazy weight loss bet. Um, you mind just taking a meeting? We're gonna do some workouts and see where it goes." Now, I didn't know when I hired him initially if I was gonna stick with him. I didn't know how knowledgeable he was. I didn't know how well we'd work together. All I knew is the gym was about 5 minutes away from my house, and he had a lot of free time besides his full time job as a cop, and so I knew he was available for me. And so as we started working, we started talking strategy and different things. He basically had the idea of, I'm going to be a bodybuilder. Cardio is a small component of this bet. And so that's kind of what we did. And we just started focusing on form, seeing where I could do. He was super gentle on my body. Like the first couple months, we did no squats. Everything was modified. Any impingement or impairment of any muscle or soreness, we moved on and we tried a different exercise. So he knew that injury was the worst thing that could happen to me, so he babied me a lot the first couple months. And when I talked to him the first day, I said, "Listen, I'm stronger mentally than anyone you've ever worked with." I said, "For my background in poker, which you know nothing about, I'm a tournament guy. I know long-term expected value. I know that consistency is everything for this bet. I will not cheat. I will not waver. I will be here every day that's necessary." And he's like, a lot of people probably say that to trainers. And
Right.
as the months went on, he started picking my brain on my mental state. He's like, "I got to figure out how to train people to think the way you do." He's like, "I know you don't love coming to the gym every day, but you're here at 3 o'clock every day, here for 2 hours, putting in all the work. It doesn't matter how you're feeling or what, you show up." And I go, "That's the way my mind works. I'm super competitive, and I know that every day I don't go to the gym is 2 days later it would take me to get to 17%. So that's
Exactly.
kind of the way I have that mentality. Very similar to the way I see poker. It's like, I'm like, the game's getting tougher constantly. I'm not studying the game. I'm getting worse compared to my peers. So every day I play now, that's it's going to take me 2 3 days, 5 years from now to make as much money, or I might become a losing player by then. So that's
Mm.
why I've always front loaded my volume so much in my career, because I know the game's going to pass me by at some point. So I'm just aware for that to happen. I'm trying to make as much money as I can before that, make as many investments, so I can be that, 50-year-old guy at the World Series who's retired, who's super wealthy, and has great income coming in, and I just go be the fucking drunk idiot having fun who used to be good at poker. I want to be that guy so bad, and I know I'll be that guy at some point.
So you had no background in training at all. No, never lifted weights, no sports,
I
nothing.
had done. I played a lot of sports in high school, but I had a bunch of injuries. I broke my ankle 3 times, my wrist. I had a compression fracture in my back playing football. So like 13, until like 13, I had no broken bones. From 13 to 16, I had like 6 major injuries.
Wow.
So I just got into computers, started playing video games, then started playing poker, and that was all she wrote after that.
So I, knowing you, and just we've worked a few times over the years with Card Player and other things, and watching you at the tables and seeing how dedicated you were and what a great player. Because in the beginning, it seemed, am I wrong here, that you seemed to struggle when you transferred over to live play? You weren't getting the results the way you were doing because you were such a volume player online, and then you just hit your stride. What was the difference that turned your mind there?
Yeah, no, I think I had extremely bad variance initially live. People shocking to hear this now, knowing what I have such a good image as a good live player.
Yeah.
I was, what, you're the worst, babe. Sorry. She just came to unplug the Alexa. So, I was down probably $1 to $2 million in live tournaments. I had no big scores, no deep runs, and I knew my greatest skill back then was final table bubbles, final tables themselves. And I never got to that situation in the tournament to use my best skills.
Hmm.
So obviously there was some bad play in there. I punted plenty of events, but I was still a winning player back then. But the variance was crazy. And I kept winning a ton of money online. So I never had a losing month those years, but my losses live were massive. My first big score live was actually the $1 million satellite I won to the one drop.
Right.
And so that I was doing really well in live cash games and mix at the time, and I won that satellite, and then it just the results came. I didn't really change my game drastically. There wasn't a big epiphany. There wasn't a big realization. There was just a turnaround of variance.
Right. So you brought up something I was going to ask you during, and you, wow, you had more injuries than I ever had playing sports. But so during this whole thing, you had no setbacks. Was there one major setback or one thing where you said, fuck this, I don't know if I can do it, or you had a little injury? Tell me about any issues along the way.
So the only two times I had any hiccups, there was one time about 2 months ago. I like was doing some stretching my legs. My back was kind of tight, so we did deadlifts for the first time. I
Uh,
talked about him avoiding injuries. He waited a long time in my training to bring deadlifts into there because so many people get injured doing it.
yep.
So we had done that, and I had like this tightness in my back, and I was trying to massage it out with the massage gun. And I was laying in my bed, and I like kind of rolled around, and I felt like this sharpness of pain, like almost like a tear. I wasn't sure what it was. Unfortunately, my massage therapist, who usually would fix that problem, was out of town for the week. So me and my trainer were talking about it, and like I had started doing running for my cardio as a warm up. And whenever I was running, I would get that sharp pain like on the
Huh.
back of like my lats and my back area, and it just kept getting worse. And I could feel this muscle that was super swollen and tight, and it felt like a rubber band. So when my massage therapist finally came and worked on it, whatever the muscle is, she calls it like the hugging muscle, and she gave me the scientific term for it, and it wraps around from like your chest to your lat,
Hmm.
and that was just super inflamed, super irritated. And I didn't tear anything, I just probably pulled it, and it was just locking up all my back. So I was a little worried about that, but then literally the first day she worked on it, it started to go away. Within 3 days, it was fixed. And then about 2 weeks ago, one of my kids got sick with strep throat, and he was sick. And when he's sick, he likes to snuggle. So he snuggled with me, and he got myself and his other brother sick with strep throat. So that set me back, and I was like, shit, I can't lift for a week. And then I talked to my nutritionist, and he gave this great diet of a bunch of food I haven't eaten, a bunch of tea, and I felt great in a couple days. And so that was right up until I did the DEXA. So like I know that Bill was happy with the buyout, and I know that DEXA at 22% was higher than what it should be because I didn't lift that week. I purposely was dehydrated and didn't eat,
Uh-huh.
knowing that if I had a lot of water and ate food, my DEXA would have been better. So I knew that it showed 22%, but I was probably closer to 21 or 20.5% at that time. So I was super confident. And then when we started discussing buyout, it just seemed to make sense for a lot of reasons to take it. And I basically told Bill I'm still going to 17% because the biggest thing that annoyed me during this bet was everyone saying, "Oh, it's so easy with $1 million motivation." The
Yeah.
$1 million had nothing to do with why I did. All it did was allow me to spend more on this,
Hmm.
but that wasn't why I did this bet at all. I told Bill privately some of the reasons I did it, and he said that's awesome, and he understands where I'm coming from. And so yeah, and so that's why I was like, I want to just get to 17 after the bet's over, so people don't say that the only reason I did it was because of the money. Because now I'm in the best shape I've been in my whole life, and I'm still pushing myself because I'm never going to push myself as hard as I am now. So
Right.
I kind of want to see how far I can go.
What was your biggest why?
Um, just some things personal that I wanted to be physically stronger to deal with some of the issues I see happening in my life in the next 5 to 10 years.
Hmm.
So, yeah, there's just some stuff going on where I was like, you know what? I need to be able to be physically strong enough to handle these issues that I know are going to get significantly harder as time goes on. And I want to be able to protect my family from those things. So that's kind of my motivation.
That's amazing. It would seem like Bill almost did this as a gift to you because if I look at the way your mind works and watching you over the years, a long time, the last 17, 18 years, and how dedicated you are, I knew that when you turned it on, you would not stop till you achieved it. So almost Bill's like, I'm willing to give him $1 million just to change his life. It seemed like that.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why I know Bill gave me a massively profitable bet in my favor. I mean, those odds were ridiculous. And 17% is not some super tough, unattainable goal in that time frame. So he gave me a lot of opportunity to win, but also he wanted me to not be risking too much because he thought I don't care that much about 100K, so I'm just gonna fucking fuck off and do whatever. But from day one, I got on a strict diet. I drank alcohol only twice in the
Wow.
last year. Both days after Dan Wyman won the main event. I mean, when your best friend wins the main event, I think that's a good
Yeah,
excuse to
yeah,
do some drinking.
you can cheat.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so I cheated a little bit those couple days, but in general, yeah, I was just fully committed from day one. There was no hiccup. My wife, she deserves all the credit for this. She meal prepped about 90% of the bet, maybe 95. She took care of the kids. She let me sleep in. She let me do everything to put this bet first for our family,
Right.
and she's awesome. There was definitely that was probably the biggest struggle. I should have answered that to the earlier question was just the adjustment of home life with this bet. My wife's used to me either being on the road or being home 20 like available 24/7 to help with the kids. So now that I'm home and was not able to help with the kids because I'm going to the gym, because I'm tired, because I'm doing cardio, me and her fighting over who's going to go on the Peloton first. She would always give it to me and then she'd have to wait and then she'd get too tired to do a workout. So there was definitely a lot of personal struggles between me and her, like any marriage. But yeah, I mean, we obviously weathered through it, and I would not have gotten nearly as far as quickly as I did without her help.
No, you need a team behind you.
Yeah.
What kind of motivation, when I talked to Matt, one of my longtime friends, Dorian Yates, and just happened to be just an amazing person, Mr. Olympia 6 times and a legend in the bodybuilding sport. When he brought it up, he said, "Oh, he can do it." You said you watched that. What kind of inspiration? He said, "Oh, no problem. He can do it." So, any inspiration from Dorian, or did you know who he was before that?
I did not know who he was. I brought him up to my trainer and another really good friend of mine who did a lot of consulting. They're like, he's a fucking legend. And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I was like trying to get Berkey to let me go on there to ask him some questions. I was like trying to get my trainer to pick his brain because my trainer loves learning stuff. He's just a sponge when it comes to knowledge. And so we were at the gym and the podcast was whatever, like 3 Eastern or 4 Eastern, whatever it was, we were like at the gym for it. And so he had just made some improvements to the gym. So he had this new speaker system. I was like, hey, let's play the interview over the thing. So
Yeah.
we're getting our regular workout and listening to Dorian talk about, all the stuff he's talking about and then the prop bet a little bit. And I knew at that time, I was at 24% body fat. Berkey had gotten a few of the numbers wrong. And I knew that we were well ahead of pace. I knew that the only thing that was going to stop me was injury. And then I got strep like the next week, and I was like, "Fuck! Like this is what I was afraid of." So yeah, I was super confident the whole way. My trainer was confident the whole way. Even when I look in the mirror, I don't have what the body that most people are 22% have, but I have a lot of genetics in my favor. And this is where Bill got really unlucky. When the doctor I hired out of Texas, Dr. Stickler, is like an anti aging, longevity type doctor who's just good at cutting edge drugs. And he looked at my blood work and was like, "You're the healthiest 300-pound patient I've ever had." He's
Wow.
like, and he's like, "You have all these genetic mutations, like your protein synthesis and this and that. Like these are great genetic defects to have for what you're trying to do." And so I had a lot of things in my favor, and because my team was so good, I started with a lot of muscle, and you can see on the decks that I was able to maintain most of that muscle. Obviously some of it went away for a little bit, but once I started testosterone deca at super low doses about 6 weeks ago,
Right.
I put on 3.5 pounds of muscle in 4 weeks doing that. So, and I was just starting to get the effects of that. That's why I knew that it's going to be very easy for me to still get to 17 because I'm still getting the results of that, those new drugs and supplements
Right.
while still working as hard as I am.
No, they'll kick in even further every month you go. Are
Yeah.
you on what you on to TRT, any HGH, or do
No,
what?
everything I read about HGH made me want to avoid it. I
I
think it's a really, really dangerous drug. And because this bet is short term, I could have taken. I had more aggressive like SARMs available to me as a
mhm.
backup plan, and I was saving some of them for the last 2 to 3 month cycle if I
Right.
really go hard on anabolics. But I knew that I was well ahead of pace. I was doing a super low dose of DECA and test, like the lowest dose the doctor would give, because we were willing to go up from it, but we just wanted to see how it'd react to just a little kickstart.
Yeah.
And I was also on another drug called enclophene, which is a natural testes booster. So
Okay.
I was like getting a lot of residual improvement from a lot of cutting edge drugs. And my body reacted very well. I was never super fatigued. I was getting massaged twice a week, 2 hours at a time. My massage therapist was amazing. Every day I would lift after a massage. My trainer's like, "You're so much stronger." Like my trainer now goes to her, and I think that I had such a good team that I had hired from day one that if I ran this bet back again, I would hire all of them immediately. Like
Right.
it, I wasn't sure, and a lot of people who I was consulting with were like trying to get me to go to their people or thought my people weren't qualified enough. And I ended up being introduced to some real experts who do this for a living, for high end people and high end, athletics. And everything they recommended to do was everything my team was already having me do.
Good.
So everything got reinforced from a scientific and strategic standpoint the more sources we got. And that made me so happy and so much more confident that my team was giving me all the right direction to get there. Because no one, none of them have done something like this before. They're all know how to get people healthier, but the strategies to get to where I need to go, there's a lot of ways to skin the cat. And some people thought way more focused on just calories and building mass. Some people thought all cardio, but we kind of went right
Mm.
down the middle and did a little bit of both, and that definitely got the best results, I think.
No, you did. So you think you'll come in probably, Dorian was predicting you could lose a percent a week. So you might come in around 15, 16 to the World Series?
Yeah, well, Dorian didn't say a percent a week. He said it's very easy to lose a percent a month. Yeah, percent a
Oh,
week
well,
would,
you can do a little bit faster. You can do a little bit faster. Depends, yeah.
but yeah, I mean, World Series is 15 weeks away. Like that would be 7% body fat. So I'm not
No,
getting there.
I went from 23% to 8 in a year. I just overworked myself eating crap for a year with my nutrition company, and then I said, screw that. When I turn 40, I'm going to be below 10%. But now it's hard to maintain that,
Yeah,
So yeah, I stay probably around 15, 16 now. But you did, I saw something that's pretty funny. I never even thought about it. You factored in your hair and beard. What the hell is that?
that was. This is I did an interview with Michael Kaplan, and I don't know if you're familiar with him, but I've done some articles with him over the past, and he reached out about the bet like a month ago, and I told him my ideas, and he's like, "Dude, you think of every little edge," and I go, "Yes, that is something I've learned as a mixed game and a poker player. Is like, I spent the first month researching dexes, like what are their flaws, how to kind of hack them, because Bill only cared about was getting a dexa, and his bet was get there by any means necessary. So I had crazy backup plans. I thought about getting a fucking Brazilian butt lift because silicone would count like in my favor. I was thinking about I grew out the hair. My last course of action, the last week, I was going to turn into dreads to get a few more pounds. So I knew everything that counted for fat-free pounds, and I was just prepared because I was like, I can get my body to like 20% super easily, and the last 3%, I can technically find a cheat code to get that to shave off.
Right.
And I was gonna, I was considering flying down to Texas where my doctor is for the last month because he has a DEXA machine in the office and literally DEXA every day. Like, all right, am I better in the morning or better at night? Like, do all this testing of do I want to eat this food? Do I want to drink this food? Do I want to, make sure I have to do this? Like, there's so many ways to lose a percentage or two on
Right.
DEXAs in the short term. So I knew if I got to 20% and I had a month, I would definitely get one that shows under 17 by just doing trial and error like I learned poker. So yeah, so the hair ended up being I forgot to weigh myself before shaving the beard, but when I took off most of the top of my head by myself because everything was closed, it was like zero point 0.7 pounds. So I think the beard
Wow.
was like probably zero point 0.2. So I think I got to the full pound, which when I'm 200 pounds overall, which I would have been towards the end, that's 1 pound of lean muscle mass it counts for. That's 0.5% on the scale.
For sure.
So like that was the type of things where I knew that it seems crazy, but you go a year without shaving your head and now all of a sudden I need to be 17 and a half really naturally. That's a big difference. That's so
For
much
sure.
easier than 17. And that's what I had ready in my head was I was going to get within close distance, take everything possible and do all these things to, get one good result because it wasn't like I had to weigh 17% on May 31st. Bill gave me a due date, which makes it, so much easier for me. It's kind of like the
Right.
Timex free throw bet. Yeah, if it was a one-time thing, it's really fucking hard. But if I can take a DEXA for the last 2 weeks and I'm close, I can figure out how to get one good one in there. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of why I think, he was happy to take the buyout. He knew that, but he also wanted to lose the bet. That's what I love about Bill.
I know.
There's no bitterness about him losing his bet. And what makes him even happier is how many people got motivated and how many people I'm helping. Since I've posted the buyout, 5 different people I've introduced to my trainer, and they're going to work with him. And
Yeah.
right after this interview, I have a phone call with another poker player that I've met before, who's like, "Hey, I want to get your advice on some things." Like, I never thought I'd be the fucking health guru in any aspect of life, and now because I studied this and I talked to a lot of really smart people and I absorbed their knowledge and I figured out what works for myself. And I think my style of doing it works for a lot of poker players who have that similar mindset that I have about, let's think about long term, let's be steady, let's do what's not going to be miserable, don't burn yourself out, let's take it slow and steady early, and then as you get more and more results, it's going to build up your motivation.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about how many people you inspired. You have Josh Ari has lost a lot of weight, right?
Yeah, so oh, this is going to be funny to say publicly. So
I
me and
watch.
Josh,
Yeah, I encourage Josh. Go ahead.
yeah, Josh is one of my 3 best friends. Obviously I mentioned Team Lucky, our little group. I think he came up with the name of it. He's always been our poster boy for luck over skill. The other 3 of us don't necessarily have that image, but Josh finds a way. As much as I think he's terrible, as you'll see in the Phil Hellmuth article at times, I make fun of Josh for his skill very often. But no, so when I booked the bet, he's like, "Hey, I'm getting married in April. I really want to be motivated to get in the best shape of my life for my wedding. I'm kind of fat right now." And so we kind of discussed how to, I didn't want to give him a piece of my bet, but I kind of came up with a parlay where he has to get to 17% as well. And if I get there, he gets a piece of the bet. So there was a lot of things because me and him had never done I've never done a weight loss bet and didn't know anything about this. There were a couple things we made assumptions on that weren't true. And because I was so focused on my bet, we really didn't work out the details too extensively of our agreement. And there were a lot of gray area things that we realized as the bet progressed that we didn't have, we weren't on the same page on some of the stipulations. So that fucking sucked. We had some disagreements. And yeah, so it was very rough for a few weeks with him and I, but we got past it thanks to our friends helping out and mediating. And now we're all good.
But he's lost how much weight?
I don't know exactly how much he's lost, like 30, probably 30 to 40 pounds. But it's crazy because I needled him so hard. He's 25, 30 pounds lighter than me. But every time he got a DEXA, his DEXA was so much worse than mine. Now, listen, he's 10 years older than me and shorter, but
Right.
also, like, he didn't live 300 pounds like I did for so long. And we talked about my genetics defects, mutations or whatever. I have more muscle than the average person. I build muscle a lot easier. I'm a very broad person. I
Yeah.
have, a lot of weight with my bones. My BMC is insane. My bone density is insane. So I had all these things working in my favor. So even when I was like 50, 60 pounds heavier than him and looked way worse than him, my body fat percentage was way lower. And
Interesting.
yeah, he was shocked. Every time he got a DEXA, he was like, "Dude, how am I 32% body fat?" And you're like, what you are. You're like, "You're 50 pounds heavier than me and like 2 inches taller." But yeah, so even like now, I'm still under him, and I needled him way too much. But listen, I've been called fat by my friends, and it doesn't offend me. So I like using all the jokes on me on other people is one of my favorite things, types of humor.
Right.
So yeah, like Glance, he got fatter than me as time went on through this bet, and so I just make fun of him constantly for it.
So some people are inspired by, obviously your kids inspired you and your family, inspired by a picture of themselves. They see something of you and themselves and go, wow, that's me right now. I can fix that. And was one of the motivations for Bill a picture he saw of you with the chicken fingers? Wasn't, did I hear
Yeah,
that right?
so that's part of the reason why I gave Josh a piece of the bet. So DJ McKinnon, who me and him had one of my most ridiculous stories of my life. Earlier the trip at Turning Stone, he gave me $10,000 of mine he was holding as a favor for me in a protein box. Okay, and he put the protein box in front of me, during the tournament and said, "Oh, you look hungry. Why don't you have one?" I was like, "I don't fucking eat protein bars. I don't want this shit." And I put it down on the ground and left it there. He told me 4 hours later that the 10K he owed me, he put in the box. Why he would
Oh,
hand me $10,000 in the protein box instead of just handing it to me? Like, I had a lot more money in my bag. I'm at a poker tournament. People know I have money. It's like I'm gonna get robbed at the casino, and people are like, "Oh, he has 10K," and I'm, "Oh my god!" It's like everyone knows me at Turning Stone. I've been there for 20 years. My home casino when I first came into poker. Like, handing me 10K is not a big deal. Just fucking hand it to me, or at least tell me when you're giving it to me in the protein box the 10K is in there. So ended up, I go over to the floor people. It's a World Series circuit, so the floor people know me, and they like the janitor's like, "Oh, I remember doing that," and he finds it in the bottom of the dumpster, and he was about to take it to the big dumpster. So I was like 10 minutes away from losing 10K.
wow.
So I'm giving DJ a hard time about that, and so when I final table that tournament, we're on the center stage, raised up, and DJ's playing a side event. And he takes the video of me, 5-handed with the chip lead, raising every hand, eating some chicken fingers. Now, that gets sent to Matt Glantz, who sends it to Josh, and Josh tweets the video making fun of me for peak performance and all this other shit he was saying. And everyone's making hilarious memes. I'm reading these laughing my ass off. And then Perkins comes in and offers me $1 million to 50K to get to 10% body fat in 2 years. Now, I know how hard that is without knowing nothing about health. And Doug Polk reaches out to me. He's like, "You got to take him up on this bet." I'm like, "Well, I'm not going to take that bet. I know how difficult that's going to be. I don't want to be miserable. And like, my marriage will end if I get 10% in 2 years." And
Right.
so I was like, and I countered the 17%. And I thought I would have to go a little bit lower. I actually thought I was going to settle on 15, and he just accepted the 17 at 10-1, and the bet was on. It's so crazy how fast it happened. I literally booked a bet down here in the in-law where I'm doing this interview, and my wife was upstairs on the other side of the house, and I go wake her up, and I'm like, "All right, listen, babe, got a couple things to tell you. You're going to be really happy with me, but I need to explain everything." I said, "What's about to happen is going to be the hardest thing for our marriage and our family that's ever happened. But this is something you always wanted me to do, and you'd always say you'd be there to help. So now's your chance to do it." And I told her the details. She's like, "That's fucking awesome. Yeah, I'm in." And it definitely got a lot harder on us than we thought personally. Um, but the physical side, the workout, everything else was easy. It was a ton of work for her to meal prep my meals, cook separate stuff for the kids, try to be healthy herself, try to get her workouts in. I don't know how she did what she did,
Yeah.
while also juggling our real estate portfolio. Like, she's done so much in the last year, and she's gonna be happy and mad that I say this in this interview. She also turned 40 in January,
Uh-oh.
and for her 40th, she always wanted to do a trip to go away with some of her friends, and she was all for that. And I said, "No, you can't go." I said, "This bet's too important. You're too vital to this bet. You can't leave for a week. I can't deal with the kids in the morning. I need my sleep. I need my energy. I need your cooking. I will give you a trip after the World Series for 2 weeks. You can take as many friends you want, spend as much money as you want, pay for everyone, but you gotta finish this bet with me, and then get your birthday gift." And she was mad. I didn't throw her a surprise party that she always said she wanted me to do. There was a lot of things I neglected during this bet,
Uh,
but she understood the goal. She gave me a hard time, which wives should do, but she also understood where I was coming from, and that this bet was important for our family. Like, this is a large amount of money, even to us, so we had to focus on it.
no, it's amazing. Yeah, and one last thing. You have to feel like you're moving through space differently. What does it feel like to be in this new body now? It has to be a huge thing. Do you
It
feel a big difference?
I don't yet, and this is one of the things that another friend of mine who's done a lot of consulting, who I actually went to the gym with today because my trainer's on vacation for a week. Um, he's always talked about maintenance. He's super healthy guy, very muscular. Always, like, he just consumes all YouTube content on health and nutrition. Like,
Right. Me
if
too.
he for years he wanted me to get Perkins to do a bet with me. He's like, "Dude, we'll get in shape. We'll make all this money. I'll fucking cook for you. I'll train you. I'll do everything." Like, he literally was gonna do 100% of the work. Like, he would have been my whole team. Um, and unfortunately, a month before Perkins offered the bet, he went back to taking a real job in this telecom sales thing where he makes really good money. And he signed on to this company for some friends as a favor. And then I booked the bet, and he's like, "You motherfucker. Like, I can't be there 100% for you." So obviously he still helped a lot and was involved in all discussions on what drugs to take, how to do DEXAs. He drove with me to a bunch of DEXAs. Whenever my trainer couldn't work out, I went to the gym with him, and he was very integral in this bet. And it's just so funny because like the timing was just slightly off for him to not get all the credit for what I've done.
Right.
And and so we talked about how much more energy I'll have when I'm at maintenance. It's like when you're cutting, when you're doing what I'm doing, pushing so hard, it's not going to be fun. But if you're
Right.
going 4 days a week for an hour a day, it's not so bad. 6 days a week, 2 hours a day plus cardio is a lot.
Yeah.
And so I don't have that energy boost yet because I'm still pushing myself to the limit every workout.
No, I get it. When you get to maintenance and you can have a little bit more good carbs, whether it be yams, I'm not sure exactly your diet. At the end of the interview, you should tell your wife to come on down, say hi. I mean, she deserves a lot of credit. That's amazing. So congratulations. Like I said, I was on team Shaun Deeb from the very beginning and was trying to find how can I help him. But you had a great team. Let's talk about the World Series of Poker. First, before we talk about the schedule, who do you have in the Tice Becker battle? That bet going on.
I've come very close to betting on Landon Tice. I've actually bought some of Landon's action in the last few years, and I think that I know Negreanu and Aryeh are very high up on Becker. I don't know if this is public, but I think they're backing Becker, or or Daniel's doing it himself. I'm not totally sure. And so obviously, when you are backing someone and talking hands, a lot of times the backer thinks their player is a lot better than they are.
Yeah.
And Becker's put up amazing results in the last year or two. I've never played with him, so I don't really can't judge with him. And I've played very little with Landon, but and usually people assume I'm on the Becker side because I'm a non-solver guy, a field player. But I understand for a lot of people coming into the game, solvers are very important. But I also don't. I also understand the value of having someone like Daniel Negreanu in your corner, one of the best people at live tells and stuff like that. If he's giving you some pointers on some things that people are doing, or you're passing along some of your ideas to him, that's fucking very, very valuable too. So
Cool.
I think it's way closer than most people think. And I also think the sample size just fucking sucks. A
Yeah.
couple World Series events is not that good. I would much rather see, a wider bet, a better understanding, or some type of way where the control is a little different. Because, like, listen, whatever one of those two shows up to the start of those tournaments, their ROI is going to be much higher. Whatever one of them isn't playing other properties, their ROI is going to be higher. Like, there's so many ways that both of them can hurt their summer EV, but increase their EV in the bet. And my instincts say that Becker will have that as an advantage because Daniel will push him to just play World Series stuff. Daniel
Right.
will probably even draft him on his fantasy team because he loves drafting his horses. So, like, that's just going to give him more ability to play more stuff and be more confident. And, being completely backed, it's a lot easier mentally to get through the summer if you're bricking. But if you're selling action individually or taking a lot of yourself, it can affect you. Like, Landon's going to have way more of a tilt factor available to him than Becker will.
Right. Okay. So I'm doing an article with Mr. Hellmuth. It'll probably come out today or tomorrow, waiting for his reaction on the Champions event. And he was so excited because it's just a rough draft. He sent it to a couple friends, including you. So, and a couple other people to get their reactions. And he already posts, like, oh my, I'm bragging already. So, first, what's your take on what he talked about as far as player of the year, the new requirements? He said Shaun has an advantage, shouldn't be the World Series of Stamina, it should be a certain amount of events. And then you said, I think today on X or Twitter, it hasn't been confirmed. What's your take on the player of the year?
Yeah, so when he sent me the rough draft of the article, I read through it, and there's plenty laughable, quotable Phil Hellmuth lines. And I was talking to Phil about it, and I said, Phil, you could be very right on a lot of these things. I'm like, listen, I've said for years, like in PLO terms specifically, I would rather take action of a really, really top level Nolan Hold'em tournament player who's kind of knows PLO than a PLO cash game player. There are things in tournaments that are true for all forms of poker. So when Phil says he's become top 10 or 20 at triple draw or Raz or whatever, it could be true. Raz specifically, he's not top 10. I've tried to crossbook him in the Raz. I've been at the final table when we won one of them. He does not play good Raz. He thinks he does, and I tell him every year that Raz is not his best game, and he has the flaw that most poker players have, where what they think is their best game, they play way too many hands, way too aggressively, and think they can outplay people, while Raz is more of an equity game than a pure outplaying people game. So Phil is wrong about Raz. He could be right about triple draw. And, but he's also put up insane results. You don't get to where he's gotten without having the intangibles that, I recognize that he has. I know Daniel gives a lot of harshness to Phil and tries to keep his ego in check, while I, am more gentle with Phil because I respect Phil as a mentor while Daniel sees him just as a peer. Phil has given me great advice in life and business and poker, and I've learned a lot from playing with Phil, from talking with Phil. So he's earned a lot more respect from me, where I think Phil and Daniel being closer in age and competing a lot more, they've vied for the top spot when Ivy, left the shadows, while I'm just recently being included in those discussions, So for me, I was always an outsider to them, and it was always Phil, Ivy, Phil Hellmuth, Phil Ivy, Doyle, and Hellmuth were discussed as the world's greatest. So it's so weird for me to be included in some of those conversations, to be talked about in interviews by Daniel and Phil as, their main competition for different things. And it's so weird and so funny. Like, I love to tell this story. So everyone remembers when Phil and Daniel got three-handed in the 50K PLO a few years ago. I got 11th place. I got knocked out by Daniel. This is when me and Daniel finally made amends and became friendly again. And I think it was Daniel got knocked out third. He called me right after he busted. It was like, dude, are you watching the stream? I go, no. I'm like, go just hang out in the room. I'm just trying to relax. He's like, you got to see it. I completely outplayed Phil. I was like, okay, I'll check back and watch the stream later. Phil busts to Jeremy second. He calls me as soon as he busts. Shaun, did you watch the stream? No. Wait till you watch the stream. I completely outplayed Daniel. Like, their whole goal at that final table was to outplay each other instead of try to win the tournament. And they're just trying, and both of them are very rough at PLO. Both of them are amazing tournament players, but have not been at like tournament PLO ICM situations. And both were chip leader at different times and short stacks, and making some bad opens, playing some bad hands post flop. Like, but everyone's going to make mistakes. Everyone at that final table made mistakes. I make mistakes in my final tables, right. But it was so funny to me to literally get the feedback from them. I was the first person they both called after busting to talk shit about the other one. And so after the series was over, I watched that final table. I took notes on hands I thought they both played badly and what they could have done differently. And I thought about like making a Doug Polt type video, but I don't have the skill to do it, and I just didn't want to do the effort, and I didn't really want to give away all the things I saw that they both did right and wrong, because PLO tournaments I think are some of the best EV there is, and there's just no benefit of me, bragging and saying why I think they should do what they do and what hands I would do it with and why they miss those spots. So I kind of left that in my phone. I'm sure a lot of people would love to see that type of content, but yeah, so it was enjoyable, and I will say that Osmus played the best of the three of them.
Yeah, Jeremy's great. The player of the year, the new requirements. What have you heard about that?
Oh, yeah. So obviously I read the thing about 10 scores minimum. I know that massively affects my EV being the highest volume player going for player of the year every year. So I reached out to Jack Effel and I said, hey, is this happening? He says, it's not finalized. We're discussing it. He says, why don't you get on a call with Daniel and you guys figure it out? So I called Daniel. We talked for like 30 minutes about a little bit of the Hellmuth article, mostly about POI. And he explained more what the World Series was trying to do, what the new scoring system was going to be, what some of the flaws he saw in it. And me and Daniel had very similar agreement of the issue with the way they were doing it, and it had to be tweaked a little bit. And but the World Series is putting a lot of effort in. I've said for years the World Series POI needs to be improved. I've said for years they need to put a proper prize on it to justify people playing as hard as me, because I think if they put 500K up top for player of the year, you're going to have 50 of the top 100 guys playing it multi-tabling me, playing as hard as me, burning equity to go for that extra bit of equity, and it would be an amazing race for the World Series, generate millions of dollars of revenue, and even more so, get the biggest names in poker to play the smallest buy-ins. And that is what I've been preaching for years. When I go play the fucking Salute the Warriors $300 tournament, which I would never normally play, but because of POY I play it.
Uh-huh.
You know how happy these recreationals and part-time players are to have a big name, someone who's won 6 bracelets at their table, or if they get Ivy or Hellmuth or Negron at their table. That's an experience that they're going to go tell all their friends when they go home to their home games where they're playing $20 weekly tournaments. Hey, I went to play Vegas and I beat Phil Ivey in a pot. I knocked him out of this tournament. That's so important to motivate the big names to play the small buy-ins,
Right.
because then you get customers for life who are hooked on the World Series, hooked on going out there every year, and they're going to go promote you to all their friends, and the numbers are going to grow and grow and grow.
Well, I saw you mention some reaction to Jeremy Becker talking. If I won $1 million event tomorrow, I'd still play the 160 the next day. So that's the mindset you got to have, kid.
Yeah, and you know that's I used to grind. I remember one year when I was 21 years old, I busted the World Series main event. I went home and I max late read to the $3 rebuy. You know,
Wow.
I used to play the $3 rebuy to the 1Ks online, and when I play live, like I don't care what stakes I'm playing. I'm just gonna play my best ability. Like most of the events I play are not gonna affect my life or my family, win or lose,
Hmm.
and I still show up for the motivation. I think, you know, in that tweet I responded about Bing Wing because he talked to
Oh,
me like a year ago. He was playing like a satellite and he was like, how do you deal with this? Like, people are giving me shit because I'm grinding a satellite. Like, you're so rich. You just won $5 million in tournaments. Why are you playing a 1K satellite? He's like, it's the best EV I have. There's nothing else to do. And why not save myself a buy into the 10K and be in for 1K? And I
yeah.
said, listen, man, you're so smart to do this and not be like, oh, I'm successful. I'm too good for satellites. I'm like, my biggest score in my career was a fucking satellite for most of my career. So
Yeah.
like, I totally get where you're coming from. I have so much respect. I was like, let people fucking bitch about the rich guy winning satellites or grinding this or while you're playing whatever. Like, keep doing what you enjoy. If this is gonna make poker more fun for you, if
Yeah.
you just go play the high rollers, you're gonna go on bigger downswings, be more miserable, and not get that elation of winning like you are when you play the smaller buy-ins. And you
Right.
just get to absolutely abuse people, and you're gonna stay sharp, and you're gonna enjoy yourself, and your quality of life can go up, and your ROIs can go up, and it's just why not grind? If you have the stamina to do it, if you have the free time, if you're away from your family on the road, why you can go sit in your room and fucking, you know, watch some Netflix when you can go grind something and make some money? As long as
For
it doesn't
sure.
affect you the next day. Don't play it at 6 in the morning every day, but play something that finishes at 2 o'clock. Go. Just keep registering and you're gonna make so much more money if you're a winning player.
Yeah. Ben had a great year, a great player. So give me your first reactions to the schedule. You've looked through the schedule. What are you most happy about? What maybe things you have issues with? Maybe talk about that a bit.
So I look at the schedule probably the least out of any known pro, because I know with my schedule, what I do is I go, I see what events that day. What's the thing that registration's closing the earliest in? I go play that. I mean, that's been my goal because my goal is player of the year first, everything else second. So I don't really have to study the schedule or cherry pick events or choose to take days off. No, I'm going to be there every single day like I've done for the last 10 plus years. That's what I do. So for me, I don't really study the schedule. I notice, you know, some of the bigger stuff. I feel like there's a little bit less smaller stuff. I know Jack Effel consulted with DJ McKinnon for the No Limits to space them out to allow people to be able to play more of them. I think DJ is one of the sharpest minds in poker. I'm amazed he doesn't have an industry job at this point, and I love that Jack uses him as a consultant every year now.
Right.
I'm happy when two smart people I like work together and make this community better, and that's, you know, Jack and everyone else he consults with are doing a great job because the schedule's been improved year after year.
Do you have one event you're looking forward to? In
I mean, I
particular event?
always choose the 50K Players Championship for that. You
Yep.
know, I think obviously winning the main event is great. I'm not Dan Wyman, so I won't be winning it. So yeah, so I that's kind of my big one. You know, I gift away all my bracelets that I've ever gotten, and my wife knows the only one I'll ever keep is my first PPC.
Hmm.
So that's always been something that's been a goal of mine. You know, it's the most prestigious event I think of the year. You get all the biggest names. You get the toughest field, the slowest structure. It's 100 people, and but you look at who's won that, and there are who's who at poker, and then there's also the grinder.
For sure. And Chip Reese starting it all off.
Yeah,
Yes, amazing legends. So talk about a little bit about the Phil interview that will come out probably today. Waiting to hear from him. Um, he's talking about the benefit of being the top 1%, and no one cares about those stats. Did you see that? Uh,
yeah.
how do you
I
feel about
mean,
that?
so listen, Alan Kessler probably gets top 1% of a lot of tournaments too. That doesn't mean anything. Final tables matter. Closing tournaments and Phil's numbers for those are insane.
For
Like
sure.
he's cherry picking one data point that he's been strong at lately, but that's not that relevant. Like we understand, smart players understand variance, and some people maybe they got a lot of top 2% finishes. Like him just cherry picking top 1% doesn't mean anything. It's not some amazing threshold. Like if you plot me down in a term with average 200 people left with average stack, yeah, I'm going to get down to top 50, a super high percentage, because that stage of the tournament, there's ways to reduce variance that
Right.
players like myself and Phil can do very well. So just getting to that point is not some amazing accomplishment. It's difficult, but it's not something that you can't do, 3 to 5% of the time for most top players. If
Right.
you're playing some of the fields he's playing, if the tournament has 5,000 people and you're one of the top 10 ROI persons, it's very easy to be super deep in that tournament because as soon as you get any chips, it's hard to get them out of your stack. It's hard not to accumulate chips when people are just giving it away and bleeding equity and overfolding big blinds or calling down too much. And a good player will just recognize that, exploit that person, stack them, and then move on to the next victim.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think that there's a very few people I think are better than me in massive field tournaments, and there's just a lot of things that can be done that a lot of people have figured out over the last few years. Exploitive play, very high laggy style, works in low buy-in, high field size tournaments. It's
Right.
just a guaranteed rate of success because your opponents just don't play back enough. So I don't think that that's much of an accomplishment, but I think Phil has a lot of other accomplishments he should focus on. But every so often, he strikes out on his self brags.
Well, and he talked about Daniel's 25,000 fantasy draft. That you two are neck and neck in points the last few years, many years. Can you
Yeah,
talk a bit about that?
yeah. I always laugh how much Hellmuth goes. He always goes to Dan Fleshman's team, and Phil just consistently puts up points. And but I think Phil puts up really good points because the events he picks tend to be the smallest field size, which gives you the most fantasy points per entry. Now, myself, I miss a lot of those small field tournaments, either because I think I'm not good enough or I'm playing something else. Like, last year I think I missed like half the 10K mixed events. And those are very easy to get 30, 50 points in. So I don't think it's that impressive because I think his goal of bracelet equity ends up being very high for fantasy point equity.
Right. Well, I asked him too about the last few summers who his biggest competition was. I mentioned Josh has been on quite the run, Josh REA. And first thing he said was, "Well, I really think of Shaun Deeb as my biggest competition. And I don't really it was, he respects, thinks Josh deserves a lot of respect. But he said, me and Shaun pick on Josh. He's goofy the way he plays, but he finds a way to win, and he always finds a way to win. What do you have to say about that kind of talk?
Yeah, I mean, I think, when Phil made the comment about he had the best World Series from 2020 to 2023, and I responded to him and I said, there's only one person of the four people in Team Lucky you had a better World Series than. Dan Wyman won the main event, won a bracelet, final table the PPC, like did some other shit, did great. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
RA's won 4 bracelets, one POI, did a bunch of shit. I've won 2 bracelets, ton of deep runs, almost won POI every single year. I was top first or second or third, whatever. So I love needling Phil about that. He's obviously had an amazing couple of years. I don't know how he does it at his age for the volume he's playing.
right.
And Josh, personally, I make fun of his skill all the time. I actually booked him at Face. So for those who don't understand, when he played the 25K horse, he bought, I think, like another 6% of himself from me when the tournament started, and he bought in, and he went on to win that. And I was there for any coaching he wanted at the final table, even though it hurt my own equity.
Right.
He finds a way to win. He knows how to close out tournaments. He knows when people are, he understands live poker and the psychology so well. And there's so much that can be said as the World Series progresses and people start to get burnt out and start showing their emotions a little easier at the table.
Right.
Players like Josh hit peak, and I do the same thing. I very rarely have a good start to the World Series. Last year was actually the first series I ever started off winning, and I ended up losing by the end because I don't know what happened, but I just stopped winning every hand I played. So it's shocking that most people assumed I crushed last summer because, like, you won a bracelet, you got second in POI. Yeah, but I actually didn't cash. I cashed one tournament over 10K, and that one I was in for 2 bullets and cashed for 12K. So
Right.
I bricked all the high stuff, so that affects your ROI and bottom line huge. But I mean, I've made insane amounts of money at the World Series, well above what my normal expected value has been because I've ran so far above expectation in the 25K PLOs, winning two of them. That's just not going to happen
Right.
probably ever again. So, yeah, I've been very fortunate, and it's just crazy because Josh finds a way to win, and I think that you know that side of poker is not getting enough credit and hasn't for many years. Everyone thinks you need to be a solver guy, but live poker is still live poker, and the World Series has a lot of fish. I don't think that style will be optimal, in the 100K no limits, but it works in a 1500 RAS and a fucking 5K PLO and all
Right.
these events where you're playing against people who are not as accustomed to playing for those stakes or playing live poker or not giving off tells or being consistent or giving off false tells. There's just something to be said for the best way to make money as a poker player is playing good against bad players.
Yeah.
And the World Series is all about that because there's very few events that you should consider tough if you're a winning player, especially, nothing under the 5K level.
Right.
You can tell me the toughest one is probably the 1500 no limit single draw because you get the old school legends who are great at that game. But then the fish in that game are just losing like 80%. So it kind of is offset. So yeah, there's just, if you're playing, anything under 10K, if you don't think you're profitable, you probably should stop playing poker.
So let's finish up. So sounds like from my years of watching it too, is that you guys all love Phil. You love to tease him and pick on him, but you love and respect the numbers he's put up. And so what is he doing different? He says, like, me, Josh must be doing something different. People don't know what I'm doing. What is your take on Phil overall? What is he doing different to continue to compete with all these solver guys and players like yourself and Chance and Alex Fox? And what is your take across the board on Phil's game?
I think he does an amazing job of getting people to play worse versus him than they would versus other people.
Yeah.
I don't remember which known pro I had this conversation with, but this was early in my career when some of the old school guys knew I was like successful online, and they were like, listen, as you get more famous, there's going to be two outcomes that fish do versus you. One, they're going to be afraid of you because you're the big name pro, or two, they're going to try their hardest to outplay you and bluff you to get a story. All you have to do to make money is figure out what one of those two people they are. And I think that's the greatest advice I've ever gotten. And the more notable I become, the more true it becomes. I literally have had plenty of tables where people are like, oh man, I'm so scared of you. And then they just fold every hand versus me. Or they three bet me and show me that they had kings. Like, they're like, I obviously have it, I three bet you. Like, you know how easy it is to play against people who fucking do that? And then there's the people who are just like, every time I enter a pot, they're playing because they have the ego. They're like, oh, I just don't have the bankroll that Shaun Deeb has. I haven't won, this tournament, but I'm better than him, and I'm going to show him and prove to him every hand we play, I'm going to outplay him. And then versus that person, I know exactly how to beat them. And that's, I think, what Phil does very well. He has great understanding of who respects him and who doesn't. And that is so important when it comes to live poker deep in a tournament, because if someone three bets you, there's someone who respects you, you can fold. If there's someone who doesn't respect you, they might be out of line. So you might have to, do something back to them. And that's what Phil, I think, understands well. And that's what I think a lot of top guys understand. I think Daniel's also amazing at that. But Daniel's just had very bad variance at final tables. And there's nothing, I don't think he's a losing player. I don't think he's, I think he should have won 3 to 5 bracelets on average in the last 10 years. He put in enough volume. He's a good enough player. He plays all the games competently enough. And, that's just, it's silly. There's so much variance of getting first or fifth or 12th or 20th.
Right.
And those who keep getting themselves in the final 20 are going to eventually close out and get the results they want, as long as they're not Alan Kessler.
Well, I'm really excited for you to see what you've achieved with your weight loss. I want to talk to you when you get to 17%. It's going to be amazing. And I understand you want to achieve it for your kids to show them that, hey, when I start out to do something, I'm going to do it. I'm going to fucking do it. Right? You mess it.
Yeah. And also, like, I know that the bet with Perkins and the other side bet I had was agreed to the buyout. And I don't know everyone else who bet on me if the person they bet with is willing to take the buyout percentage, or if like, oh, he's got to get 7% or you lose. Like these bets, these prop bets, there's always so much gray area, and people try to angle. So I would feel so awful if I took the buyout from Bill and didn't put in the effort to get to 17 to let everyone who bet on me and believed in me win money on me. And also, I forgot to say this. So part of the reason I took the buyout. Turning Stone's coming up in March, where I'm defending champion, and that's where the bet happened. I really wanted to go there. And in April, Josh Ari is getting married. And I told Josh about a month ago that I was probably not going to his wedding because I was focused on this weight loss bet. I've missed a few weddings, one of my business partner and some other people I am close with because of this bet. So by taking the buyout, I'm now willing to go to those two spots. And obviously, I know it hurts the equity of those who bet on me to get to 17% because I'm going to probably have some drinks at the wedding. I told you I haven't drank at all, but, I didn't get to celebrate, and I'm going to be with my friends and watching one of my friends marry the love of his life, who I love as well. And so I want to celebrate with them. And I've been to too many weddings in the last year sober. I went to 6 different weddings to start last year, and I was sober at all of them, and I was miserable. Okay, I couldn't eat the food. I couldn't drink. And everyone just wanted to ask me questions about my weight loss and different things. And obviously, I had that scruffy ass beard and that long hair that I fucking hated. So I looked like I got so many jokes from my family. I remember one wedding I went to, it was on a farm for one of my cousins. And I decided to shave my mustache that day. And my brother, my family's great at busting balls. That's part of the reason I have my humor, is I've been picked on my whole life from my family. And he's like, oh, the Amish guy's here to fix the barn. He just made Amish jokes the whole time. And then when I went and played pickleball with him like 2 weeks ago, he's telling me I look like the caddy from Happy Gilmore. I'm missing a shoe. Like, it was hilarious. I laughed at all that stuff. But it's just like not fun to not be able to be, well kept. But I knew that it was profitable for me. So I'm like, listen, I'll just deal with the jokes. And my wife knows I'm not as photogenic. I'm shocked that when I shaved my beard and shaved my head, my wife asked me to keep them both after she's been giving me such a hard time about them.
Wow.
She wanted me to see me with the beard that's trimmed, but I just wanted to get all that hair off my face, all that weight off. And I just stared at myself in the mirror for like 20 minutes after I shaved. Then the next day I shaved my head effectively, and I just kept looking at myself, and I look so different. I still look young. I haven't looked like this in a long time, and it's just weird to me. I've never been a vanity person. I still don't care what I look like, but it's just, I don't know. You hear people talk about not seeing the person they expect in the mirror as people get older and different things. Well, now with this weight loss bet, I didn't get to see the progress in my face. So it was a big shock to me when I shaved everything off. It's like, okay, here's what I have right now. This is what I'm working with.
No, it had to be like it's a big transformation, both body, mind, and spirit. You've done all this work, and then you're like, who is that guy in the mirror now, right? And looking back at you, you go, who's that guy? And you've achieved such an amazing transformation. I wish your wife could pop her head in and say, hey, I did it all.
I can walk over.
Walk up to her. I got to say hi to her. We'll finish up the interview. But I've been there.
She's probably going to yell at me because she's probably got...
The meals are the hardest part. So
I want you for a quick 2 minutes of the interview.
Shaun, you never cheated? You never had a cheat day? Even these big guys have a cheat day one day. No cheat day?
Nope. Give you 5 seconds. She wants to make herself look prettier.
No, I saw the work she was doing behind the scenes when you shared, and I know that's the hard work. You
Yeah.
did you do any of the cooking? Did you make like breakfast, eggs?
Like twice I did. I can't cook. Here you go, babe.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I've seen pictures of you on X and Twitter, and you did all the hard work, right? You did all the heavy lifting for this bet.
I keep saying all Shaun has to do is eat and work out and sleep. I do the rest.
What was the hardest part for you? It had to be some of the chef stuff. You're cooking for different calories for different people, right?
I'm just cooking for Shaun, his meal prep, and then the normal, like, everyday cooking for the kids and for myself.
Right. That's amazing. And then he said you couldn't go on your trip until after this was done. What was that? You said you had a little disagreement there.
Yep. I said, 40 is kind of a big deal. When I turned 30, I was pregnant.
Yeah.
He was like, that would be a lot easier than planning a birthday trip for you. I'm like, yeah, we got to do something. 40 is a big deal. And he said, okay, after the series, after I'm done with my bet, then we'll do something cool.
What was the hardest part of the whole thing for the last year?
Um,
Besides just food.
I mean, so when he's gone traveling, playing poker, I do it all, like I'm the disciplinarian, I'm the fun mom, like I'm every single piece of that. But doing that when he's here is harder because the kids are just like, want him, want him, want him. And he's so depleted from his workouts sometimes.
Yeah.
So just like running around and picking up the slack and doing everything has just been, like exhausting.
Right. Well, congratulations. Is he right there? Is he right
Shaun, are you right there? Not sure where you went.
Here? We'll do the walking interview. I'm so proud of you guys. I was rooting for him from day one.
Yeah, the meal prep was quite challenging at first, but most recently I kind of had it figured out where some of the meals I was making, I would just make enough where there's like enough for us, and then also like all of his like 3 or 4 days worth at a time. So finding that system ended up working out, but
you can't track him with the Alexas. I heard you've got Alexas in every room.
Yeah, that's for the kids to come down when they're upstairs.
Shaun, thank you for your time, man.
You're welcome, Craig. It was great chatting with you.
Yeah, nice to talk to you. I'll see you at the World Series.
All right, thanks, buddy.
Bye, guys.